Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded. We're making modern love simple. Get ready to decode your love life. Brought to you by Speed Mingle.
Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded. Today we are doing a massive deep dive into a topic we are calling the pilot light, keeping love alive on high heat. And I want to kick this off with something that absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, yeah, me too. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the deep dive. Get ready for this one.
So if I showed you the functional MRI scan of like a teenager who is exactly 3 weeks into that obsessive, sweaty palm, totally all-consuming first love.
Right, the real intense stuff.
Exactly. And then I asked you to compare that scan to the brain of a couple who's been happily married for 21 years. You know what you'd see?
Well, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
None. You literally couldn't tell them apart.
It is wild. They are chemically identical. I mean, when you look at the ventral tegmental area, which is that primitive dopamine-rich reward center right near the base of the brain, both of those brain scans light up in the exact same pattern.
It's crazy.
It really is. It's just a blazing constellation of neurological reward. And you know, what that proves is completely revolutionary for how we view long-term connection, because it proves enduring, passionate, high-heat love is an actual biological reality.
Wow.
It's not a myth, and it definitely does not inevitably have to, fade to gray over time.
Okay, I have to stop you right there and challenge that immediately. Because, I mean, how can a slow burn, 21-year marriage possibly trigger the same dopamine spikes as a brand new crush?
I know, it sounds impossible.
Right. It goes against literally everything we're taught about how relationships naturally cool down over time. I mean, we're told the spark fades, you get comfortable, and you basically just become roommates who, split the grocery bill.
Right.
How is it chemically identical?
Well, it's because we fundamentally misunderstand what the spark actually is.
Okay.
We think of the romantic spark as this, stroke of luck, or some fleeting magical state that just vaporizes over time.
Like it has an expiration date.
Exactly. But the clinical data shows us that it's actually a highly specific biological state. And more importantly, it is a biological state that we can actively engineer and maintain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But the catch, and this is really the core paradox of our whole deep dive today, is that it requires incredibly precise fuel management. You have to actually know how to operate the machinery of your own nervous system.
Which perfectly sets the stage for our mission today. Because when you look at modern dating culture, we are living in this profound structural paradox.
Totally.
On one hand, society has fully embraced raw, unfiltered desires.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People are radically open about what they want. But simultaneously, we've completely abandoned the structure, the boundaries, and the intentionality that historically kept those desires safe and sustainable.
Right. We just tossed out the rule book.
We really did. We tossed it out and just expected the human brain to adapt overnight.
And the human brain simply hasn't changed its fundamental requirements for connection. It just hasn't. So, whether you are listening to this as a single person who is completely exhausted by the endless, repetitive loop of modern dating apps.
Oh, we've all been there.
Or, maybe you're sitting there having been married for a decade and you're waking up feeling like you and your partner are just running a joint business venture.
Just managing logistics.
Right. Either way, this deep dive is going to decode the mechanics of your situation.
Right.
We are going to figure out how to navigate what is arguably the most complex, overwhelming relational landscape in human history.
Yeah, and to understand how to build and maintain this spark, I think we have to start by looking at what is actively extinguishing it.
Absolutely. We need to deconstruct the dark ages of modern romance.
The dark ages, that's exactly what it is. Because right now, we are living in a documented epidemic of what the sources call uncertified dating. And the burnout is not just anecdotal, it is highly, highly quantifiable.
The numbers are staggering?
They really are.
Yeah.
Look at the 2024 Forbes Health Survey. 78% of dating app users report feeling profoundly fatigued by the ecosystem.
78%.
And when you isolate Gen Z, that number climbs to 79%. And get this, people are spending over 50 minutes a day just swiping.
Let's actually pause on that number for a second. 50 minutes a day.
It's basically a part-time job.
It is. That is nearly an hour of sustained high-speed visual processing where you are making split-second binary judgments on human faces. From a neurological standpoint, this induces profound decision fatigue.
Yeah, your brain just fries.
Exactly. The brain is not built to evaluate hundreds of potential mates in a single sitting. The cognitive load is just staggering, and, the psychological toll of that load is severe.
Right.
There was a recent clinical poll that found that 1 in 3 adults have actually hired a therapist specifically to cope with the stress, the burnout, and the trauma caused by dating app usage.
I mean, 1 in 3. Think about the scale of that failure for a second.
It's massive.
If a third of the people using a consumer product have to go out and hire a licensed medical professional just to recover from the psychological damage of using that product,
Then the infrastructure is entirely broken.
completely broken.
Yeah.
So how are these clinical manifestations presenting? Like, what is actually happening to people in these therapy sessions?
Well, therapists are seeing a massive spike in somatic stress responses.
Meaning physical symptoms.
Yes, genuine physical symptoms manifesting in the body just from opening the app on your phone. Patients are reporting a tight chest, a sinking pit in the stomach, jaw clenching,
Oh, wow.
shallow breathing. And this happens because the brain is experiencing a relentless cycle of micro-rejections.
Micro-rejections. Let's break that down.
Right, so every single time you swipe left, you are doling out a micro-rejection. Every time you send a message that goes unanswered or you match with someone who immediately unmatches you, you are receiving a micro-rejection.
Just chips away at you.
It does. It chips away at your baseline psychological safety.
I want to throw an analogy out there to really visualize this, because to me, it feels exactly like pulling the lever on a broken slot machine.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You walk into a casino, you pull the lever, you get the flashing lights, the intermittent bells,
Yeah.
A match here, a text message there.
Little hit of dopamine.
Exactly. It gives you just enough of a hit to keep your hand on the lever, but it never actually pays out the jackpot. It's just conditioning your brain for exhaustion.
That is a perfect behavioral analogy. I mean, it relies on what psychologists call a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement.
Which is gambling mechanics.
Exactly the same psychological mechanism used to build addictive slot machines. The platforms are engineered for engagement, not for outcomes.
Because if you find love, they lose money.
Right. If you look at the fundamental architecture of these platforms, a successful relationship is, by definition, a lost customer.
Yeah, they do not want you to delete the app.
No, the platform does not thrive when you find love, delete the app, and walk off into the sunset. It thrives when you stay in the loop, constantly searching, continually swiping. You're being conditioned for the search, not the connection.
And this endless search reads these terrible, self-sabotaging modern habits. I mean, we have an entire culture trapped in text threads that stretch on for weeks, but never materialize into an actual physical meeting.
Purgatory.
Yes, purgatory. We have the total normalization of ghosting, which creates immense anxiety because there's just zero closure.
None.
And then there's digital filter fatigue. The data explicitly calls out this incredibly common pitfall. People are constantly using outdated, poorly lit headshots with expired, heavy digital filters on their dating profiles.
It's so common.
It is. And it's an attempt to hack a broken system with artificiality, but it completely backfires.
Well, it backfires because it shatters trust the absolute second you meet face-to-face.
Right. You show up and you're like, wait, who is this?
Exactly. If someone shows up and they look fundamentally different than their curated, filtered avatar, the very first biological signal your brain receives is, this person is deceptive. I am not safe.
You start in a deficit.
You do. But even if we remove the filters from the equation entirely, we have to look at what happens when you finally get past the swiping phase and actually sit down for a date. Because structurally, the modern interview date is a biological disaster.
Okay, walk me through this. Let's say I actually get a match, we navigate the text thread, and we agree to meet at, like, a loud, crowded coffee shop on a Tuesday evening. What is happening in my body?
Let's map it out. You walk into the coffee shop. You sit down directly across from this total stranger face to face.
Right.
You have a physical table acting as a barrier between you, and you immediately launch into checklist questions.
What do you do for a living?
Where did you grow up?
What are your 5-year career goals?
Do you want kids?
It feels incredibly stiff. It honestly feels like I am applying for a mid-level management position at a regional logistics firm.
Exactly. And the biology of that specific setup, sitting face-to-face, firing interrogative questions back and forth, perfectly mimics a corporate interview or a police interrogation.
Wow.
Yeah, and this triggers a very specific psychological phenomenon called evaluation anxiety. When your brain perceives that you are being actively evaluated or judged, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. Your amygdala sounds the alarm, and your adrenal glands release a massive flood of cortisol, which is your primary stress hormone. And here is the critical evolutionary mechanism. Are you ready?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Cortisol actively and aggressively blocks the release of dopamine and oxytocin.
Wait, let me make sure I'm fully grasping this.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that if I am stressed on a date, my brain physically cannot produce the chemicals required to feel love?
Yes, exactly.
That is insane.
It is, but if we look at evolutionary biology, it makes perfect sense. Imagine you're a prehistoric human and you are being evaluated by a predator, like a tiger stalking you in the brush.
Right, I need to run.
In that moment of intense evaluation, your body needs you to run for your life. It needs cortisol. The absolute last thing your brain wants you to do in that moment is bond, relax, or feel romantic arousal.
So it shuts that system down.
Yes. It suppresses dopamine, the neurotransmitter for excitement and reward, and it suppresses oxytocin, the hormone responsible for trust, comfort, and bonding.
So the modern brain literally cannot distinguish between the existential threat of a stalking tiger and the social threat of a judgmental hinge date asking me about my 5-year plan.
Precisely. Your nervous system is reacting to the interview date as if it is a literal survival threat.
Oh my God.
So when people go on these dates and they come home and say, we just didn't have any chemistry, they are often completely wrong.
Because it wasn't that they lacked chemistry.
It's that natural chemistry was biologically impossible in that cortisol-soaked environment. You literally locked the biochemical doors to connection.
That is genuinely mind-blowing. I mean, if the entire current system, from the engagement-driven slot machine apps to the cortisol-spiking interview dates, is fundamentally rigged against our biology, how do we shift our strategy? We obviously have to stop treating romance like a scratch-off lottery ticket.
Right. The required shift is a move toward extreme intentionality. The analytical framework suggests viewing your dating life as a relational portfolio.
I love this framing.
Yeah. Just like a complex financial portfolio, it requires long-term strategy, a focus on compounding genuine connection, and serious risk management rather than just passive, mindless gambling.
I really want to pull on the thread of this portfolio analogy, because if you think about financial investing, right? If you only throw your money at high-risk, incredibly volatile stocks, like meme stocks, or a brand-new crypto coin that spikes 500% in a day and then crashes the next into the start, you are going to lose your mind.
You'll be a wreck.
You will burn out watching the charts, and you will likely go broke. And in the dating world, those highly volatile stocks are what the culture mistakenly calls instant fireworks.
Oh, absolutely.
A strong relational portfolio demands that you seek the steady compounding interest of mutual curiosity instead of those dangerous spikes.
And the foundation of that relational portfolio begins with what clinicians call the self-spark principle.
Self-spark, what does that entail?
Well, we've been conditioned by pop culture to view passion as something external, right? Something another person gives to us. We just wait for someone to sweep us off our feet.
The classic rom-com narrative.
Exactly. But the clinical data firmly establishes that passion is contagious, and true magnetism stems entirely from internal vitality. It does not come from seeking a partner to fill a void in your own life.
So you cannot be like a black hole in space, sitting there generating zero heat of your own, just waiting for a passing star to crash into you and light you up.
No, because you will just absorb their energy until you both collapse.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
Singles must conduct a ruthless audit of their own internal flame. Before you even attempt to find a spark with a partner, you have to ask yourself, where is the spark in my solo life?
Like, what am I passionate about?
Yes. You must re-engage with your stagnant hobbies, take on solo adventures, and pursue personal growth. When you are deeply engaged with your own existence, you don't walk into a date radiating neediness, desperation, or evaluation anxiety.
Right. You aren't starving for validation.
Exactly. You walk in radiating curiosity and self-assurance.
And how do we practice this in the wild? Because it's one thing to say, be more vibrant. But if you've been isolated and burnt out, social interaction is terrifying.
It is.
The data points to this concept of micro-connections. How does that actually work mechanically?
Micro-connections are about intentionally and playfully engaging with the periphery of your social world. It means striking up a 30-second conversation with your barista, chatting with the commuter next to you on the train, or bantering with the person in line at the grocery store.
But with no agenda, right?
Absolutely zero romantic agenda. The goal is simply to lower your baseline social performance pressure by regulating your nervous system.
Let me guess. If you only ever practice talking to strangers when you are sitting across from them on a high-stakes Tinder date, your brain is going to permanently associate socializing with threat and evaluation.
Exactly. You're training your nervous system to panic. But if you practice low-stakes, friendly banter every single day in safe environments, you apply what's known as the polyvagal theory. You tone your vagus nerve, you train your brain that social connection is inherently safe, enjoyable, and low risk. By the time you actually go on a date, your baseline cortisol is remarkably lower.
This perfectly transitions into dismantling the myth of those instant fireworks I brought up earlier. Because Hollywood has completely ruined our biological understanding of a good first date.
They really have.
We have this culturally ingrained narrative that if you don't feel a racing heart, sweaty palms, and this intense, overwhelming swarm of butterflies in your stomach the exact moment you meet someone, then there is no spark and you should immediately move on.
This is undoubtedly one of the most toxic, pervasive myths in modern romance. We need to look at the biology of what a racing heart and sweaty palms actually signifies.
It's not love at first sight.
No, those are not the symptoms of profound soulmate compatibility. Those are the textbook biological markers of the sympathetic nervous system going into overdrive. They signal anxiety, unpredictability, danger, and fear.
Wait, so we are literally mistaking a localized panic attack for true love.
Essentially, yes. We are confusing the adrenaline of danger with the dopamine of connection. When someone is highly unpredictable, maybe they're emotionally unavailable or they're sending mixed signals, our anxiety spikes.
And we feel the butterflies.
You feel those butterflies, which is really just our gut warning us that the situation is unstable. We have to radically reevaluate our criteria for a spark. The clinical consensus is that we must seek the slow burn.
Okay, what does the slow burn physically feel like on a date if it doesn't feel like a panic attack?
It feels like nervous system regulation. It looks like comfortable compatibility, shared values, and most importantly, an effortless ease of conversation. Does your breathing slow down around this person?
Oh, that's a great metric.
Right. Does your posture relax? A lasting, sustainable spark is built through a foundation of safety, not immediate high-stakes drama.
All right, let's fast forward the timeline a bit. Let's say you do the work. You audit your internal flame, you build your relational portfolio, you abandon those cortisol-spiking interview dates, you find that wonderful slow burn connection, and you commit.
The dream scenario.
Right. You settle down, you move in together, or you get married. You think you've crossed the finish line. You think you've won the game. But the data shows that the threat simply mutates. It shifts from app fatigue to domestic stagnation.
Yes, and this brings us to a pervasive phenomenon that plagues millions of long-term couples. It is clinically referred to as roommate syndrome.
That sounds ominous.
For any listener currently in a long-term relationship, this might sound uncomfortably familiar. Roommate syndrome occurs when a couple is perfectly kind to each other, they are highly coordinated in their daily tasks, but they are quietly, deeply disconnected from one another's inner lives.
It's exactly what we referenced at the top of the show. They are running the household like a highly efficient military logistics operation, but they haven't actually looked each other in the eye and had a meaningful conversation in 6 months.
Clinical psychologist Dr. Marcus Thorne defines this specific dynamic as the logistics trap. It happens when couples stop talking to each other and they entirely shift to managing life with each other.
Just ticking off boxes.
Exactly. The vast, rich landscape of their communication shrinks down to a purely operational checklist. Chores, schedules, childcare, and finances. Did you pay the electric bill? Who is picking up the dog from the vet? We are out of milk.
And when the entirety of your relationship becomes an administrative checklist, emotional starvation sets in, which leads to this incredible, tragic concept from Dr. Sue Johnson, the protest polka.
Oh, the protest polka.
Walk us through how a couple dances the protest polka, because the statistics tied to this are terrifying.
The protest polka is a brilliant clinical term for the demand withdrawal pattern that systematically destroys intimacy. Let's imagine a scenario. A couple is trapped in the logistics trap. Emotional starvation has been compounding for months.
Okay, tension is high.
Very high. Eventually, one partner, let's call them the pursuer, feels the pain of this isolation and reaches out for connection. But because they are starved, stressed, and resentful, their request for connection doesn't sound loving. It sounds like a harsh, biting criticism.
Well, they don't say, I miss you, let's hold hands. They say, you never spend time with me anymore. You come home and immediately stare at your phone. You don't care about this family.
Yes.
They are protesting the emotional distance, but it comes out as a venomous attack.
Exactly. Now look at the other partner, the distancer. They hear this sharp criticism, their heart rate instantly spikes above 100 beats per minute, which triggers a biological state called flooding.
So they're overwhelmed.
Completely overwhelmed and feeling unfairly attacked. To protect themselves from this perceived threat, they withdraw. They shut down, they give one-word answers, they stonewall, or they literally get up and leave the room.
And when they walk out of the room, the pursuer panics. The pursuer's worst fear, which is abandonment, is happening in real time. So the pursuer follows them down the hall, escalating their demands, yelling louder to try and force a response.
Which only terrifies the distancer more, causing them to lock themselves in the bedroom.
That is the protest polka in full effect. A desperate demand for connection disguised as criticism, met with a terrified withdrawal, which triggers an even more desperate demand.
And here is the sobering reality. According to the research, this specific demand-withdrawal cycle is an 80% predictor of relationship dissolution in the early years.
80%.
Yes. If you are stuck in this dance, your statistical probability of divorce or breakup is staggeringly high.
An 80% predictor of failure. So how do we stop the music? Like, how do we break out of the protest polka and escape the logistics trap before it destroys the foundation?
Well, the structural fixes here rely heavily on the renowned Gottman Institute's framework. And the absolute first line of defense is updating what they call your love maps.
Okay, what is a love map?
The love map is one of the most vital concepts in relationship psychology. It is the mental blueprint, the detailed psychological geography that you hold of your partner's inner world. It contains their current fears, their daily stresses, their evolving hopes, and their shifting goals.
And the key word there is current.
The absolute key word is current. A massive trap for couples who have been together for 5, 10, or 20 years is the arrogant assumption that they know everything there is to know about their partner.
Here's the analogy I use for this, because when you frame it in modern technological terms, it really highlights how absurd our behavior is.
Let's hear it.
Every single week, we update the software on our smartphones, right? A little notification pops up saying there's a bug fix, and we immediately download the patch. We constantly refresh our apps so they function properly. But we haven't bothered to update the mental software of our partner in a decade. You are trying to run iOS 1 on a complex relationship that desperately requires iOS 17.
That is a perfect translation of the concept. You do not know the person sitting across from you at the breakfast table today. You only know the person they were 10 years ago when you first met.
They've changed.
Everyone changes. You have to actively download the new data. You have to ask them new probing questions that have absolutely nothing to do with household logistics. You have to map out who they are becoming.
And the second part of the Gottman framework requires couples to actively turn toward their partner's bids for connection. What is a bid exactly?
A bid is any attempt, a verbal comment, a physical gesture, a lingering look, a sigh that essentially says, acknowledge me, connect with me.
So it can be really small.
Incredibly subtle. It could be as simple as your partner looking out the living room window while you are typing on your laptop and saying, oh, look at that strange bluebird.
Now, if I am busy and stressed, my instinct is to just grunt, not look up from my screen and keep typing.
And if you do that, you are actively turning away from the bid. Turning away over time breeds a deep, quiet loneliness. It signals to your partner that their inner world is not worth your attention.
Oh, that hurts.
It does. But turning toward, which means stopping your typing, actually looking out the window and saying, oh, wow, what kind of bird do you think that is, builds immense trust. It is a micro-affirmation. And the data here is incredibly clear. Happy, successful, long-term couples turn toward each other's bids roughly 100 times in a 10-minute period of casual interaction.
100 times in 10 minutes. That is a constant flowing stream of micro-connections.
It's a habit.
Yeah. Now, let's pivot and look at this exact dynamic through a completely different, highly unexpected lens. Because the analysis provides this incredible framework from the culinary world that brings all of this psychological theory into sharp, practical focus. Let's talk about the pilot light philosophy developed by executive chef Marcus Vance.
This is perhaps the most powerful operational metaphor for relationship management we have. Chef Vance runs high-end, chaotic commercial kitchens. And he explains that during a brutal Friday night dinner rush, passion alone does not clear the tickets on the board.
No, you'd crash and burn.
Passion does not cook the food perfectly under immense pressure. Systems do. Discipline does. And relationships, exactly like commercial kitchens, survive on robust, maintained systems.
He breaks the survival down into the 80-20 rule of culinary partnerships.
Yeah.
Let's look at the 80% first. In a kitchen, the 80% is the prep and maintenance. It is the mise en place.
The foundational work.
Exactly. It is the incredibly unglamorous, repetitive, daily logistics. Sharpening the knives, finally chopping 50 pounds of onions before service, wiping down the stainless steel stations, and executing safety checks. It is not flashy, it is not romantic, but if your prep station is a mess, your entire dinner service will completely collapse the moment the restaurant gets busy.
Exactly. Translating that to a relationship, the 80% is the updating of the love maps, the turning toward the subtle bids for connection, the equitable splitting of household labor, and the conscious maintenance of emotional safety.
And then you have the 20%.
Right. The 20% is the high heat sear. In the kitchen, this is the roaring flame that creates the perfect crust on a steak. In a relationship, the 20% is the intense intimacy, the highly planned spontaneous date nights, the grand romantic gestures, the passionate sex.
But here is the absolute crux of Chef Vance's philosophy.
Yeah.
You cannot run a burner on 100% high heat constantly without scorching the pan and burning the kitchen down.
You just can't.
If you expect your everyday domestic life on a random Tuesday night to feel like a high-heat honeymoon in Paris, you are going to destroy the relationship. You have to learn how to manage the pilot light. It needs to burn low, steady, and predictably, so that when you need the high heat, the fuel is ready.
And part of successfully managing that steady pilot light is surviving the daily transition from the chaotic outside world back into the sanctuary of the home. Chef Vance talks extensively about the extreme danger of emotional residue.
What is emotional residue on a physiological level? Like, what's happening?
It is a heavily documented psychological phenomenon regarding the half-life of adrenaline. When you experience a high-stress environment, whether that is running a chaotic kitchen line, navigating aggressive gridlock traffic on the highway, or getting chewed out by a difficult client on a Zoom call, your physiological state of stress does not immediately evaporate the second the event ends.
It takes time.
It takes the human nervous system up to 20 full minutes to dissipate that adrenaline and cortisol after the stressor is completely gone. Your brain is still locked in fight or flight mode.
Let's paint the picture of how this destroys an evening, because we've all done this. A partner comes home from a brutal, high-stress, 12-hour workday. They walk through the front door, and they are literally still vibrating with adrenaline.
Just buzzing with stress.
They are carrying the operational, barking tone of the kitchen pass right into the living room. And their partner, who has been home and is perfectly calm, asks a totally benign, harmless question. Something like, "Hey, did you remember to get the milk from the store?"
And boom. Because of the emotional residue, the stressed partner's brain does not process that as a simple question about groceries. Their hypervigilant, cortisol-flooded amygdala processes it as a mid-service critique.
They feel attacked.
They feel completely attacked, so they snap back aggressively. I have been working for 12 hours straight dealing with absolute chaos. Why are you interrogating me the second I walk in the door about milk?
And instantly, a massive fight breaks out. The protest polka begins. But the fight isn't actually about milk, and it isn't about their relationship. It is an entirely manufactured conflict born strictly out of biology and terrible transition timing.
Precisely. Which is why Chef Vance advocates for a strict operational fix, the 10-minute shift.
I love this rule.
It's life-changing. When you transition from the battlefield of the workday to the sanctuary of the home, you must establish a 10-minute buffer zone to purposefully decompress. Maybe that means sitting in your parked car in the driveway in total silence for 10 minutes before you put your key in the door.
Or walking inside, saying a quick hello, and immediately taking a hot shower to physically wash off the tension.
Yes, you have to purposefully shed the psychological armor of the workday before you engage with your partner.
And to aid this transition, the framework recommends implementing the 1 to 5 heat index code. I think this is brilliant in its simplicity.
It's so effective.
It is a numerical shorthand way to communicate your mental capacity the exact moment you walk in. So you open the door, and instead of picking a fight, you say, "Hey, I love you, but I am at a level 4 heat index tonight. I am completely fried. I just need 10 minutes in the bedroom alone.
It is incredibly effective because it removes all the guesswork. It sets crystal clear expectations and prevents the calm partner from internalizing the stressed partner's coldness or exhaustion. They don't think, oh, they are mad at me. They think, oh, they're at a level 4 from work.
It depersonalizes the stress.
Exactly. Furthermore, the clinical framework advises implementing a daily 10 to 15-minute stress-reducing conversation once both partners are regulated.
But there are strict rules for this conversation, right?
Very strict rules. During this 15-minute window, discussing domestic logistics is completely banned.
No milk talk.
No milk talk. You cannot talk about the mortgage, you cannot talk about the kids failing math grades, and you cannot talk about the broken water heater. You only talk about external stressors. The terrible boss, the annoying coworker, the traffic.
And the listening partner's job.
The listening partner's only job is to offer unconditional support. You don't play devil's advocate, you don't offer solutions, you simply take your partner's side. It firmly establishes a psychological we against the world mentality.
This all sounds great for emotional safety, but how do we rebuild the physical safety that gets lost when you've been stuck in the logistics trap?
Okay.
Because usually when roommate syndrome sets in, the physical affection completely dries up. You aren't just not talking, you aren't touching.
Rebuilding physical safety relies on the deliberate practice of micro-intimacy. And once again, we return to the hard biology of the nervous system. The clinical directives detail two highly specific daily practices, the 6-second kiss and the 10-second hug.
I have to admit, when I first read that, it sounded incredibly rigid and prescriptive. I mean, why exactly 6 seconds and 10 seconds? Why put a stopwatch on intimacy?
Because it takes exactly that long for the human body to register the safety cue and alter its neurochemistry. Yes, a brief passing peck on the cheek does absolutely nothing to your nervous system. But a sustained, full-body 10-second hug is long enough to physically lower your heart rate, significantly decrease cortisol production, and trigger a massive release of oxytocin. It literally rewires your biochemical state in real time.
But there's a massive caveat here that we have to highlight. The experts emphasize that you must strictly separate this physical affection from any sexual expectation.
This is arguably the most important rule of microintimacy. If every single time you touch your partner, every time you hug them in the kitchen or rub their shoulders, it is viewed as a prelude to sex, it creates immense, suffocating performance pressure.
Especially if one partner is chronically exhausted.
Exactly. The exhausted partner will start to subconsciously flinch and avoid all physical touch. They won't hold hands, they won't cuddle on the couch, because they don't want to accidentally trigger a sexual demand that they simply do not have the energy to fulfill.
So the well dries up completely. To fix it, you have to establish a rule that a hug is just a hug. You have to touch just for the sake of biological regulation.
Exactly. By separating baseline affection from sexual expectation, you remove the performance pressure and allow physical comfort to return to the relationship.
So, if we step back and look at the macro picture we've painted so far, whether you are prepping the station for a 20-year marriage or you are stepping out into the brutal dating field for the first time in years, the biological reality dictates the exact same truth. The human brain desperately needs environments that actively lower cortisol and foster shared, safe focus.
Yes. For long-term couples, creating that environment means breaking the logistics trap with the 10-minute shift, updating love maps, and practicing micro-intimacy. But for single people who are actively dating,
Right, what do?
creating that environment means completely and utterly abandoning the cortisol-spiking interview date. Which brings us to the ultimate structural question of this deep dive.
Right. If the current ecosystem, the endless swiping, the variable ratio slot machines, the interrogation-style coffee dates, is fundamentally and biologically broken, what do we replace it with? We cannot just sit here and tell single people to be more intentional while throwing them right back into the same casino.
No, we need an entirely new architecture for human connection.
And that is exactly what Phase 3 of our analysis is focused on. We are looking at a comprehensive structural remedy, the Speed Mingle ecosystem.
The ultimate structural remedy.
Now, I want to be clear. We are analyzing this as a brilliant architectural case study of how to fix a broken social system. It takes everything we just learned about neurochemistry and applies it to event design. It forces a complete behavioral paradigm shift from passively interviewing digital avatars to actively experiencing real human beings.
It perfectly aligns with the biological mandates we've been outlining. It is meticulously engineered to lower evaluation anxiety, tone the vagus nerve, and increase shared lateral focus.
Let's analytically break down the 6 specific modalities of this ecosystem, because each one systematically solves a different biological or structural pitfall we discussed earlier. Modality number 1 is Speed Mingle. Anywhere.
Speed Mingle Anywhere facilitates authentic face-to-face video interactions from the safety and comfort of your own home. Let's look at the problems this solves. It immediately eradicates filter fatigue.
Because it's live video.
Exactly. You are not staring at a highly edited 10-year-old photograph. You are seeing the person's real-time micro-expressions. Furthermore, it completely eliminates the purgatory of the endless text thread. You bypass the ghosting and the ambiguity, but you do it in a highly controlled, low-pressure environment where your baseline safety is maintained because you are in your own physical space.
It strips away the artificiality without triggering the massive cortisol spike of meeting at a crowded bar. Modality number 2 shifts the venue to the physical world. Speed Mingle Social. These are described as relaxed, non-hosted weekly gatherings at established local venues. Why is the non-hosted group gathering aspect so vital biologically?
It is all about the diffusion of social pressure. When you are on a traditional one-on-one date, all of the conversational weight, all of the eye contact, and all of the evaluation is concentrated entirely on your shoulders. It is a spotlight.
It's exhausting.
In a relaxed, group-oriented gathering, the stakes of any single interaction are massively lowered. You can mingle, you can step away to get a drink, you can observe how someone treats the bartender, and you can engage naturally without the glaring interrogative spotlight.
Now, modality number 3 is where the evolutionary biology really takes center stage. Speed Mingle happenings. These are highly curated, activity-based events. If the interview date is the disease, this is the literal cure.
Precisely. This modality leans heavily into the biological law of novelty. We know that the dopamine center of the brain thrives on novel, slightly challenging shared experiences. Speed Mingle happenings completely eliminate the awkward, cortisol-inducing small talk by forcing your attention onto a shared lateral task.
Let's visualize this. Instead of sitting face-to-face asking about 5-year goals, you are standing shoulder to shoulder trying to solve an escape room or taking a pottery class or navigating an interactive art exhibit.
Yes. Your visual focus is on a third object, not locked onto each other's evaluating eyes. And by engaging in a shared task, you get to experience real-time behavioral data. You see how they handle minor frustrations, how they collaborate, and how their natural sense of humor circuses when they make a mistake. It is authentic data gathering without the interrogation.
It takes the high-wattage interrogation lamp off the data and shines it on the activity. It gives that slow burn spark the actual oxygen it needs to catch fire. Moving on, modality 4 is, in my opinion, absolutely vital for baseline mental health in our modern era. Speed Mingle Neighbors.
Speed Mingle Neighbors consists of high-energy social events specifically designed to turn local strangers into friends. Crucially, there is absolutely no romantic pressure or expectation attached to these events.
This maps directly back to the self-spark principle and the practice of micro-connections we discussed earlier.
Exactly. You have to build a rich, vibrant solo life. You cannot rely on a romantic partner to be your entire social ecosystem. These events are about building your village and increasing your baseline social ease. By practicing low-stakes conversations here, you tone your nervous system. You lower your overall social performance pressure across the board, making you far more resilient and attractive when you do enter a romantic setting.
Modality 5 takes the concept of the relational portfolio to its logical conclusion. Speed Mingle B2B is a high-octane, round-robin, professional networking format. Because your portfolio isn't just romantic, it is professional, it is social, it is communal. This modality treats the whole person, ensuring that your career circle benefits from the exact same structural intentionality as your dating life.
And finally, Modality 6, which is slated to launch in the fall of 2026. Speed Mingle 1-to-1. This is the culmination of the ecosystem's data and intentionality. It will offer pre-vetted, highly personalized, low-pressure meetings based on real, deep, verified compatibility. It entirely removes the exhausting randomness of the slot machine swipe.
So, after traversing this massive landscape, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's distill the core takeaway of this entire deep dive. The romantic spark, that elusive, blazing fire we are all desperately chasing, is not a static stroke of luck. It is not a magical lottery ticket you just stumble upon while walking down the street. It is a professional-grade skill. It is an environment you construct.
It absolutely is.
It's cultivated through intentional systems, through radical vulnerability, and through the sobering recognition that human connection is an active daily discipline.
It fundamentally requires managing your pilot light. Whether you are actively dismantling the logistics trap of a decades-long marriage by implementing daily 10-minute decompression shifts and obsessively updating your love maps, or you are a single person meticulously cultivating your internal vitality and completely abandoning the interview date in favor of shared lateral experiences, the mechanics are exactly the same. You have to manage the fuel. You have to protect your nervous system.
Exactly. And now we want to issue a massive, undeniable call to action for you. Do not stay on the broken treadmill. Do not keep pulling the lever on the broken slot machine hoping for a different payout. Take the initiative, step into an environment actually designed for your biology, and attend a local Speed Mingle event to mix, match, and mingle.
And if you find that there isn't an event currently available in your specific area, do not just wait passively. Take the lead. Contact Speed Mingle directly to see how you can become a local host or a venue partner. Be the architect who brings this crucial infrastructure to your own community.
You can find our deep dives everywhere you consume media. We want you to integrate this knowledge into your daily routine, so find us on audio via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Deezer. If you prefer to watch the conversation, you can find us on video on Speed Mingle TV via YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire TV. Just search for Speed Mingle Network. Or you can access the mobile web app directly at speedmingle.mobi.
And please make sure to visit the official hub for all of this structural dating intelligence and so much more at 21stCenturyDatingDecoded.com.
We also have a quick, vital listener support request. Please smash the subscribe button on whatever platform you're using, drop a 5-star review to help us beat the algorithm, and most importantly, share the specific link with that friend who is burning themselves out. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The friend who still uses an expired digital filter on a dark, outdated headshot and complains that dating is broken. They need to hear this science.
Before we sign off, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. We live in a society that often frames gossip as a purely negative, toxic behavior. But if you look structurally and historically at evolutionary sociology, gossip was the primary vital mechanism humans used to map out who to trust and how the world worked. It was our whisper network. It was our social survival tool.
But in the extreme, hyper-individualized isolation of modern dating, sitting completely alone in our quiet bedrooms, bathed in the blue light of glowing rectangles, swiping endlessly on strangers with no shared context, we have lost our trusted whisper networks. We have lost the context of the tribe. Rebuilding your village through structural interventions like Speed Mingle Neighbors isn't just a fun detour on the way to finding romantic love. It is about reclaiming the vital context of who you are in a community. It is about surrounding yourself with people who can help you vet, trust, and ultimately thrive.
It is about engineering a robust, safe environment where your pilot light can burn brightly, surrounded by the right fuel without ever scorching the pan.
Until our subsequent episode, remain deliberate, maintain protection, and consistently date with a defined purpose.
Welcome to Speed Mingle.
Where making real connections happens in
Stream,
seconds.
swipe, socialize, your ultimate connection network.
Jump in now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Speed Mingle Network.